Thanks for joining us for this web seminar recorded in March 2014. Donna Reed is a Senior Records Analyst for the National Archives and Records Administration's Office of the Chief Records Officer. As part of the Records Management Services Agency Assistance Team, her job is to help federal agencies with records management issues in all formats and media, with a focus on electronic records. She provides records management training classes, hands-on technical consulting for implementation of electronic document and records management systems, scheduling, and other records management assistance. Donna is a certified records manager, a certified document imaging architect, an AIM electronic records management specialist and enterprise content management practitioner, and she has a BA in business management. She currently serves as the president of the board of the Florida Gulf Coast chapter of the Association for Records Managers and Administrators, and she's a member of the Society of Florida Archivists, Florida Records Management Association, ARMA, and AIM.
I think that Paulette covered it all in the bio, and I don't need to add any more to that. The topic is getting organized, and the focus is setting up your electronic files. And this is the result of a lot of work that I do with other agencies where I see this as an issue that people just don't address sufficiently. So let's get organized. The first thing you have to do is sort of define or recognize what constitutes a lack of organization. Obviously, this is the definition, the official definition of what a mess is, a state of affairs of confusion or something that's full of difficulties. And I can tell from doing training and working with agencies that this is often the state of affairs when it comes to electronic records within federal agencies, just full of difficulties. That picture, by the way, in the slide deck was something that I took here at my house with my own collection of paraphernalia. Anybody, anywhere can make that. But what does it mean to be organized and neat? Obviously, you're putting things together in an orderly, functional, structural whole. You want it to be, and you want it to work the way that it should work. So why do we care whether our stuff is organized or not? That's the big question. Two reasons. One is operational efficiency. The other one is that it's the law. So let's talk about operational efficiency. What does that really mean? It means we have what we need to get the job done, to deliver things and services and in a cost-effective manner. There was a statement many years ago that someone said, "He who has the best information always wins." Well, if you can't get to that information, it's not very efficient, and you lose that operational efficiency. And then there is this thing called the law, which is 44 U.S. Code 3101, says that agencies must maintain an active, continuing program for the economical and efficient management of the records of the agency. So there's two good reasons why we should care whether things are organized or not. So what does it really cost to find information? A lot of people will tell you that records management is what they call a soft cost, that you can't attach dollars to it. And that's not actually true. The ARMA International did a survey back in 2009, and that's obviously been a few years ago. Average employee wastes $5,251 a year just looking for their stuff, for their information, for their records, for the data that they need to do their job. Employees spending 3.5 hours a week just looking for information that they usually cannot find. So this is a real cost. There are actual hard dollars associated with this lack of operational efficiency. Does it matter if you say, well, I'm just going to keep everything. I don't need to apply any records management principles, or I don't need to clean things out. I'm just going to keep it all and search on it. Well, it does matter. And once again, there's costs associated with this. The Sedona Conference group, and if you're not familiar with that, I suggest you look them up on the Internet, assumed review costs of $200 an hour for an attorney, and the estimated cost to review 1 gigabyte of data was $32,000. So if I have to respond to a litigation, or I'm involved in something where I have to hire an attorney to do a review of my documents, there are hard dollars associated with this. If it exists, you have to produce it for litigation and for FOIA. If you got it, you got to produce it. So the larger your digital landfill, the more difficult it is to locate the right information. You're looking for that needle in the haystack, and it's not simple. even with the really good tools that are out there, and not every agency has good tools, searching tools, but even with those, you may get a hit that has, 500-600 documents and you're only after 2 of them. And that would be even a small result from what a lot of agencies are holding. So how would you feel if your Social Security files were lost? You get ready to retire, or you're already retired, and all of a sudden your checks stop coming because, oops, we misfiled your Social Security records. How about all your personal identification documents destroyed? No birth certificates, no photos, no property records. This is exactly what happened in Katrina. People lost all record of their identification. They had to take them at their word that their name was what it was, and if they remembered their Social Security number, that that's what their Social Security number was. They were just wiped out. Everything they had. The records were in basements. The records got washed away and destroyed. What if your medical records couldn't be located and you were in an emergency situation and somebody needed something? What about the rescue workers that are in the building, and let's say they're looking for you and they don't have maps or floor plans? These are all things that we feel if we can't find the records and the documentation that we want to put our hands on. So these are very real problems. Now we have the way it used to be. Think a while back. Information was easier to control. You had gatekeepers, those wonderful secretaries. They knew about file plans. They knew how to create them and use them. They knew how to put the information in an orderly fashion so that they could retrieve it later. Only special people could create business information. Those were the ones with the typewriters. Everybody didn't used to have access to a keyboard. The boss never did any typing. He dictated a letter. The secretary typed it. There was maybe one copy made with a carbon sheet of paper, and that was the one kept in the office, and the original went out the door. And you had a very limited volume of records and information being created, and it was highly controlled in the best of worlds. It wasn't always perfect, though. If no one actually took responsibility, then the records would get misfiled, neglected, or, as you can see, worse. So, we had imperfection in those days, too, but it was still easier to control when all I had was paper that I was dealing with, and that's what people remember. Unfortunately, we're stuck in the 80s, because the 80s came along and Pandora introduced this great box into everyone's office and said, oh, good, now you have a computer. You can do all your own work. Management thought, well, we must not need secretaries anymore because everybody can be their own secretary. So they either let the secretaries go or repurpose them into other jobs. And when the secretaries were no longer there as the gatekeepers, then that knowledge base on how to manage the information wasn't there. It wasn't available. No one was telling anyone how to set things up and how to manage all the information that now everyone could create. So the old way was replaced with electronic chaos. You had information that has distributed ownership. I can have people all across the world entering data into a single database. Gatekeepers, a thing of the past. Everybody's like, I don't have time for that. That's not my job. That's your job. Everybody with access to a computer or any mobile device that's out there, they can all create business information and records. We can all delete. We can all distribute. We can all alter. There's no control. So the volume is out of control. It's unlimited. And by the way, it's growing exponentially. It's really getting huge. Some statistics on how it's growing. Doubling every 2 years in the world's information. Over the next 10 years, the number of servers in the world will increase tenfold. Oh, and by the way, there are costs associated with all those servers. They have to be cooled. They have to be backed up. They have to be maintained. Everybody thinks, oh, server space is cheap. Just add another server. Once again, there are direct costs associated with that. And the amount of data managed by data centers is going to increase by 50-fold. And here's a piece. 7.9 zettabytes will be created in 2015. And you're like, what are zettabytes? Well, there's 1 zettabyte equals 1 billion terabytes. Right now, the estimate for the Library of Congress is 10 terabytes. There's just more information being generated than you can possibly shake a stick at. So where do we go wrong? A screen like this, not exactly a good filing system. Hopefully, that's not what anybody there is looking at. We forgot to equate this, your filing cabinets and your filing systems, the way of doing business by paper, with this electronic world. We forgot to say, if we did it this way over here, then we now need to do it this way over here in the electronic world. Here's a sample of an uncontrolled shared drive, probably a familiar environment to most of you. You'll note that there are folder names with no meanings to anyone. V200-111117. I know it's an Excel spreadsheet, and that's pretty much all I know, unless I'm the author of it that came up with that cryptic name. And then I've got a gbwave.bmp, a bitmap. I've got meetings. What kind of meetings? These names mean nothing. I've got loose documents not even placed in a folder. They're just loose. And if you click on a high-level folder and you've got, another 50 documents that aren't placed in a folder, that's the equivalent of opening a file drawer and just jamming paper in anywhere. You didn't put it in a folder. What are your chances you're going to find it when you need it? It's no different. Electronic files should be structured like filing cabinets were. It's not hard. Honest, it's not rocket science. So if I have a old-fashioned filing cabinet with folders and my tabs have metadata information on them, budgets, finance, facilities, then my computer folders should have the same names. There's no difference. The biggest difference is that instead of cleaning out my physical folders every year or every fiscal year or calendar year or at the end of the project, I need to go and clean out my electronic folders. And to make it easier in the electronic world, I may want to add names after budget. I may want to put FY 2014. I may want to put the calendar year that something closes. I may want to include that in the folder name. We need naming conventions in our offices. There doesn't seem to be a common practice of naming conventions with any agency that I work with. People will call their folders stuff, things, and they'll put special projects. Well, what kind of special projects? Just because it's in the records management division doesn't mean I know what that special project is. Now I have to open the folder to find the names of all the special projects because I don't have enough metadata in that title. And I love the one, marks, keep out. Like everybody's going to pay attention to that. So when we name our folders, we need to give them names that reflect common sense. We need to give them a name where if somebody comes along to take your job when you've won the lottery and you're not coming back to work, they could actually know what to find in the folder. They should be able to open this up and say, oh, okay, here's what I'm finding. I've got internal training and individual development. I know right there I've given myself enough descriptors to know what I expect to find in that folder. Naming conventions are really important when you're trying to manage your electronic records. They were important when you were managing your paper records. You had naming conventions then. You had a folder or a filing cabinet that was all the finance department. You had another filing cabinet that was all HR. We used those tags to identify what went where. These are agreed upon formats, names of folders, documents. If you're going to do a date, then what's the format in your office for the date? Is it year, day, month, month, day, year, day, month, year? There's not that one's right and the other is wrong. It's just make sure everybody's on the same page so that when you send documents around and you have a date in it, everybody knows what to expect to find. Well, what about subject lines for your emails? That's a great place to use naming conventions, to create metadata that helps you know what you need to do with this email. When I get an email and then this beginning of the subject line it says FYI, I'm not too concerned with it if I don't get to it immediately. If I get another one that says urgent, I'm opening it right away. Somebody needs something from me immediately. So you can use the very first word in an email subject line to create these naming conventions that help govern how the email itself is classified. Do you have a pre-existing numbering system? Can you use it in your naming conventions? Are you going to use alpha or numeric identifiers or a combination of both? These are things that you need to sit down in your office and figure out because everybody does business differently. Here's just some examples. I'm in a group and we have reference material, we have correspondence, we have products we produce. So we use these three-letter words or codes at the front of the name So then as the files fill up, all the products are together because it's sorting alphabetically. We have a date at the end, so it's all then by the year. And it sorts just as it should. It enables the sorting of the subjects, and the dates are in order within the subject. So these kinds of things help us as we try to manage these electronic records. If I'm circulating a document and it's a draft, and I know there's going to be multiple versions, because everyone has an opinion, right? So I'm going to call it training template, and I'm going to put the word draft in there, and I'm going to put V1, and then I'm going to put the date. The next time it goes around, I'm going to change that V1 to V2. I'm going to change the date. I want to make sure that when all is said and done, and I've gone through 15 versions of this document, that I get to the last one and it says final. It no longer says draft. But I can go back and I can erase or delete every single one that says draft because I know what the final one is, and I've kept my naming conventions going as I went through the process. Don't name a document with just an alphanumeric code. You know, it's AC 26.2012. Okay, that's probably the year 2012. Other than that, I don't know anything at all about that document. There's not enough information there. You know, you need a decoder ring to figure out what these cryptic names or files are. That's once again left over from the beginning of the computer era when we were limited to how many bytes or how many characters you could have in a file name. Those limitations are not there anymore. You can have, in most cases, over 200 characters in a file name. Call it what it is so that you can find it later, so that somebody else who needs to find it can find it. They don't need special training to interpret the file names in your office. So where do we get this file folder structure from? Well, it should be coming from your file plan, which is your decoder ring. And some of you may say, file plan, what's that? Well, the file plan is simply a subset of your retention schedule, a schedule that only covers your area of responsibility. If I'm working for an agency and there are 35 different divisions in the agency, but I only work in one office in one division, my file plan is just going to cover the records that I create in my office within that division. I don't need to know what everybody else in the organization is creating. I only need to focus on the types of records and documents that I'm creating within my area of responsibility. Let's take an example here. This is the general record schedule. These are just some of the record series listed in the schedule. There's, I think 27 listings right now, 27 chapters. And I just threw some of these up here. And we're going to focus on number 14, which is the Information Services Record. That's the schedule within the general record schedule that you can find on ours website. And that particular series includes FOIA records. And within that series, it actually has this numbering system, 14.1 acknowledgement files, 14.2 information request files, etc. And it tells you in the description what the retention is for those types of files. So if you take that retention, and you can see some of these are 3 months, 14.4 is 1 year, 14.11 and .12 both have multiple retentions within that one series because it's talking about there are different things you have to do, and it depends upon when you get it and what it is, so you have to read that information. But I would know if I put documents in there that, hey, I need to check this folder and see what the retention is. But if I know for a fact that everything that's going into acknowledgement files has only got a 3-month retention, then I can put that in the folder name so that I know by looking at it and looking at the dates, oh, I can get rid of this. I can delete this. This is, I apologize, it's a little bit of a fuzzy image, but you can see I took the GRS and I put those items that I had on the previous slide, and they're all listed here on the left-hand side. Audiovisual records, GRS 21, civilian personnel records, GRS 1, and there's the information services records, GRS 14. Now, you may decide if you're going to set something up that you would want the GRS numbers first so that it would put it in numeric order. These are in alphabetical order. Depends upon how you want to do business. And you can see under GRS 14 that I have 2 fiscal year folders. One is 2013 and one is 2014. Under 2014, I have the listing of those same file names that I got from the series itself. So you start parking things where they need to be. If it's by calendar year, you put CY. If you have a project that has a close date, you're going to find another way to identify it, just like you would if it had been back in the days of the paper world. How you do business is how you determine to set up your files. Your business is your driver. Use your organizational chart to determine your functional areas of responsibility. How wide do we reach for our file plans? You know, if your records and documents are managed by the calendar year, then you can set up high-level folders by the calendar year. You can duplicate the folder set for the new calendar year, and then you've already got everything in place. Same thing for fiscal year. But let your business determine the level of granularity. If you're an office that has 7,000 FOIA requests in a year, and I know one that does, then you need a lot of granularity at the folder level to manage the records that go in those folders for their specific retention. But if you're one of those offices that maybe gets 8 FOIA requests in a 3-year period, you don't need that level of granularity, but you still need to manage the records appropriately. And what if you already have some software tools in place? Because some agencies have been able to purchase software tools that help them manage their records, purchase searching tools, all kinds of things. Well, no software is plug and play. Doesn't make any difference how much money your agency has spent on software. You still have to have some sort of file structure determined first. The software needs to know where to map the data to, where to make the divisions at, so that it isn't searching the entire database looking for something. Maybe you use SharePoint. In that case, you really need governance or a gatekeeper. I have seen multiple implementations of SharePoint. In some cases, there was no gatekeeper assigned to it, and the pages just looked like a mess. They were a digital landfill and electronic, you know, the essence of a mess. And then in other cases where they assigned someone these gatekeeper responsibilities, someone who made sure governance was in place, then the SharePoint site becomes useful to everyone. People can trust the documentation that's on it. What you're seeing here is a screenshot from the Commercial Crew Program at NASA, and they took their records series and they created this SharePoint site. They have governance rules in place. They had a governance configuration management governance document that they created before the SharePoint site was built. They sat down and mapped out how they wanted things to look. They did it right, is what it boils down to. And it's much easier to do it right before you actually stand up your SharePoint site than it is to go back and try to clean up a mess. So cleaning out the files. You know, the file structure, whether it's fiscal year or calendar year, or it's just new case files, you still have to clean it out. We have a tendency to leave it in place because it's not a physical filing cabinet that's taking up real estate. But it's taking up space on the server. It's taking your time because you can't find something, and maybe you find 3 versions of the same document, and you really don't know which one is the right one. You know, if you're going to do this, like I said earlier, just copy your file structure from how you set it up previously. You can change your case names or put new dates on the folder. If you have a folder that has everything in it from, you know, calendar year 2010, and it's only got a 3-year retention, then when the documents in that folder, everything in that folder has met its retention, I can delete the entire folder and its contents, because if everything in that folder only has a 3-year retention, then I can delete it en masse. I'm not going in and hunting for individual documents that have met their retention. So to summarize why it matters, you know, we know why it matters. Records matter to everyone. They're important. There are costs associated with the improper management of records and information, and these are hard dollar costs. You have to be proactive in managing electronic data. You know, in the old days when all the records were in paper format, you could afford to ignore them for extended periods of time. The Dead Sea Scrolls are a perfect example. There's sections of them that are still readable by your eyes. You didn't have to worry about migration of data and things like that. But now in the electronic world, we have to be mindful of how we're managing our data at the front of the life cycle, not the end of the life cycle. You have to put filing structures in place. You really need naming conventions for both manual management of your e-records and for the use of systems. And you need to clean out those files as much as you may not want to. Anybody is welcome to contact me. I'm on the agency assistance team, and my job is to help agencies with their records. So I'm more than happy. I am on the road a fair amount of time, so sometimes I'm not as quick to answer as I would like to be, but I will always get back to you.